Welcome to my first installment of KnoSum, just to get to know artists that I get to interview. I want to
Thanks
introduce.
for having me.
Yeah,
I'm inaugural. I'm the first one. I better be good. All right.
Andy Rok from Flobot's lead guitarist, professor extraordinaire.
That's right. Many hats. Many hats. Also, dad and husband and professor, producer, songwriter, manager, comic book nerd, and Marvel enthusiast. Yes.
Who's your favorite Marvel character?
I mean, Spider-Man's my favorite superhero of all time, pretty much. It's not fancy, but it's true to my heart. Spider-Man is my guy, mostly because I think the reason or why he's lasted so long is just because he's just like a normal guy trying to figure out his life while also doing this amazing thing. Like, oh, I'm also saved the world, but I also have real problems. And I'm trying to balance all these things and figure out how to live my life. I just feel like I relate to that, as do lots of people.
I was gonna say that like really makes me think of you. Like you can relate.
Yeah, I feel about myself. I'm like, so he's my favorite.
So what's up with that shirt? I just noticed that.
Oh, this is like there's this woman in Brooklyn who's like a teacher, and she has this t-shirt company called like Mahogany Mommies or whatever, and so she just like print stuff like this, like having the Phirism, like she has ones like love hard, drink water, fight racism, or racism, all kinds. There's like so much. She has like a bunch of different stuff, but she's like basically a mom and a school teacher and a woman of color like running a business, so it's like a small business. So I'm like, yeah, I'll just support that. And I like the shirts, so, and they fit comfortably, so yeah, that's what that's about. I mean, I don't think that's can't really be a bad statement.
Absolutely, man, I support that.
Pretty much so.
Let's get into these questions, man. I'm excited.
All right, yeah, let's do it.
So, what was the first instrument you learned to play?
I think my first instrument, I think it was piano and then trumpet, or it was trumpet and piano. It was one or the other. I think I learned them around the same time. Maybe I started on trumpet and then went to piano. I can't totally remember, but I think I started playing in school band. I think it had to be like second grade or third grade or something like that. I think it was pretty early on. I think I've always sung, and I probably sang in some choir stuff, but I think it might have been trumpet. I think.
Did you ever like trail off and learn any songs with trumpet outside of what you had to do for school?
Not really. I think I only played trumpet till middle school. I think I played trumpet till the end of middle school, I think. And then I started getting into guitar around that time. Like, I think I got my first guitar like in 7th grade or 8th grade, I think. And during that time too, this is like 90s. So this is like, Nirvana and like Weezer. And it's like Nirvana's pretty huge at that point. And Green Day and stuff like that. So I was just learning how to play like power chords and stuff like that. And my first guitar was like an Ibanez, I think, like a Strat copy Ibanez. It was not a great, I mean, it was a fine guitar, I guess, for starting out, but it was black and white. And, but it wasn't like a good guitar because like the strings would get caught on the frets, you know? So like if you do that, it would like get caught on the frets or whatever a lot, but it was a good guitar to learn on. So that was like my first guitar.
That actually was like into my second question, is when you started playing guitar.
Around like, I think 7th or 8th grade. But I never had guitar lessons. So I just like, I don't even know how, I think I had some friends maybe show me how to I kind of knew how to read tab. And I knew music, like I knew how to read musical notes from piano and from trumpet, so I knew how to read like, notes and clefs and chords and stuff, but I didn't know how to transfer that to guitar knowledge, so I didn't know how to read notes on a guitar, and I don't think my parents couldn't really afford guitar lessons, so I don't think I really had real guitar lessons until I went to college. Ironically, the college I teach at now, and ironically, the same guitar teachers who taught me are still at the university, tenure at the, like Paul Musso and Drew Morell were my guitar teachers, and they're still teaching at the college. But that's the first time I actually had, like, besides like people, like I was in a band and stuff too before that. Like I had my first band when I was like 15 or 16, called the Function with a K, and it had like, horns, and I was like the lead person, singer, rapper, and I played guitar in it, and we had bass, drums, guitar, trumpet, saxophone, and then eventually added another guitar player and like a turntablist or something. But even when I was doing that, like I still had never had a guitar lesson. So like people were showing me how to do stuff, and I kind of knew like what certain chords were kind of, but like I, was writing entire songs and doing stuff, and I didn't really know what any of those chords were really. So it wasn't really till I got to college that I kind of learned all the theory and all the chord voicings and all the major and minors and jazz chords and all the stuff that like, I could communicate with a horn section and be like, this is the chord, this is the progression, this is the stuff. So it took me, I was actually pretty late in my guitar skill ability, because a lot of kids, if they were told, like parents could probably pay for them to learn guitar, and learn how to solo and stuff like that. And, I was a poor kid in North Denver, a poor Mexican kid in North Denver, that we didn't have that. So I just had to figure it out. And I didn't have the internet. I mean, we had the internet, but we didn't have like YouTube and all this stuff where like, man, if that stuff had been around when I was a kid, I definitely would have learned like so many more things so much quicker.
No joke, man. Internet's been a huge difference in learning stuff, especially for me, even making it through college.
Yeah.
I'm gonna backtrack just a little bit. You got ahead of me, but I wanted to ask, like, what were some of the first few songs that you learned to play on guitar?
Ooh, I mean, it was all that like it Smells Like Teen Spirit for sure. What was it like? Oh gosh, like I think I learned like some Oasis songs and Weezer songs, like Sweater Song, like Wonderwall, some Green Day song. I can't remember exactly. It was like a lot of Nirvana stuff. Oh, Smashing Pumpkins stuff, like Siamese Dream, like Today. Like, I don't know, there were so many like great like 90s guitar bands that, or whatever was on the radio, like Everclear or like, I don't know, but mostly like Nirvana, Weezer, what was it? Offspring, guess a little Metallica, but I didn't really get into Metallica stuff till later. It was really mostly like, and like ska bands, I guess, like Real Big Fish or something, or Boston's, I don't know. But I think like the first thing I should say that was the first like cool songs that I learned. I knew how to do like basic like G, C, D, basic open chords. And I think though, actually what I was learning was a lot of church songs actually. For like church camps, and because my dad was a pastor, so I had to do the whole evangelical crazy church stuff like when I was younger. So I think I actually learned a lot of church songs actually, because those could, you could do like G, C, D, F, like just basic chords, and like those were mostly a lot of like, but it was like whatever crappy, church event, like I don't even remember, like, but not cool stuff. So it might have started with Christian type things, and then cool stuff was like, it was like 90s alternative stuff.
Cool, right on. Sounds like you got a good base though, like a good incentive too.
Yeah. But it's funny though, it's like it wasn't like the Beatles or like like all this other, and then like later on, like in like high school, college, it was more like funks, like James Brown and that kind of stuff was like oh, and I guess Chili Peppers too. I guess trying to figure out Chili Peppers was like a lot of stuff because like I love the Chili Peppers and that was really hard stuff to play on guitar, but you could at least kind of get it, or like you could figure out under the like playing Faye Under the Bridge was like really, really hard. So I guess Chili Peppers would be a big one in there too, just because Fragente was such a, I would say definitely Fragente and like Eddie Hazel from like Parliament were probably like some of my bigger guitar influences, I would say.
Hell yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Oh, so you've already answered the question about your band, The Function, in high school.
Yeah.
How long
There's a CD around there somewhere. It's very, it's funny to listen to yourself writing songs at 16. But yeah, interesting stuff.
Did you play in any bands while you were in college?
So then I started Bob Schism, which was my funk band. So I had my high school band, The Function, which, we were like, and we actually played around quite a bit. Like we played the Bluebird and the Ogden, and because like I learned how to promote kind of early on, and we could like, that was one thing that was cool kind of about high school, at least the music stuff, was that like I invited like everybody to come to our shows. So even if it was like the drama kids or the jocks or, like the cheerleaders or like the IB kids, like the cool thing is like I learned early on, it's like, well, I want everybody to come to the show. So I would invite everybody, and we were all in high school, so we'd all try to get all our friends to come, right? So sometimes we would bring like 300, 400 high school kids to a show, and then that allowed us to open up for like other bands while we were in high school. And then, from the time I was 16, I definitely was like, oh, I want to be a rock star. I want to be in a band. Like, that's what I want to do. So I was convinced that my high school band was going to be huge. And then everybody went to college. And then I was bummed out. And then I started trying to make a new band with Bob Schism. And so like that had gone through tons of iterations with like lots of different players. And that ended up being the basis for Flobots, was like Schism was starting to play, and then we started playing shows together, and then I kind of got those guys, the rappers were like rapping to CDs and stuff like that, and I was like, this is not cool. Like, why don't we just have a band back you up, like the Roots or something like that, because I think that would be really cool. And I hadn't seen, there weren't a lot of bands doing hip hop, like backing up rappers in that kind of way. Like there was like a band called Yo Flacco back in the day in Denver that was kind of doing that, but more jazz kind of infused. Maybe, but they were maybe doing it before us a little bit. And that was the only kind of live hip hop band that was in town, like at all. So it was kind of like that. I did Schism, and then I think I might have dinked around in some other people's bands, like little indie rock bands or something every once in a while, but really kind of focused on Schism. And then that kind of turned into Flobots, and then Flobots ended up getting signed, and then I toured with them and put out all the stuff on the got the major record deal and the publishing deal, and then kind of left that band in 2011, 2012. Then went back to working on Schism, then kind of did my own thing, and then took a kind of a hiatus for a few years while I was having a baby. And then basically rejoined Flobots at the end of 2019. And that's kind of my only musical. And during all that time, I was like producing other bands. I was like writing, producing, managing. So I was like making records for other bands during that time period, and kind of fostering other bands and stuff during that time too. So it was that high school with Schism. And then that kind of led to Flobots, which kind of gave me my professional career in music.
I wanted to ask, so according to like Wikipedia, Flobots has been around since 2000 roughly, and you helped bring it together or actually make it into fruition around 2004?
Yeah, that's probably right. Like those guys, they technically were rapping together in high school as Flobots. So Flobots, like originally with Stefan and Jamie and like a crew of like, it was like a Wu-Tang kind of thing with like 7 other rappers or whatever in high school. And they did put out like a cassette tape, like I think in '99 or something like that. And then, you know, everybody went to college and like nobody really took it seriously. It was just kind of like a fun friend kind of thing. But Jamie, or Johnny Five, he was really into rap. Like he wanted to be, like, he was a great rapper and loved rap, right? So he made a solo record called Onomatopoeia with our friend Farhad, which was actually really kind of a cool record. And this is like maybe 2001. So also around this time, keep in mind, like there have been no like credible white rappers. Like Eminem is just starting to basically break, I think at the end of '99 and early 2000. So he's like the first legitimate like white rapper that's like actually a really good rapper, right? Not Vanilla Ice, not whatever, that like Dre is like, this guy could be purple and I don't care, he's a great rapper, right? That kind of opened the door, right? So it's like, in my mind, Jamie, different kind of rapper, but I'm like, is a good rap. Like I was like, he could write raps as good as Eminem or whatever. Like it's just different, but he's a really, really good rapper. So that, and the album they kind of just made in their basement. They worked on a whole summer, and like Farhad, he's a drummer, and he kind of helped make the beats and do stuff. And then they were kind of doing that stuff with CDs. And then Stefan and Jamie have been best friends for a long time. So Stefan is Brer Rabbit, one of the MCs, and Jamie is Johnny Five. Like Johnny Five's the main guy, raps on Handlebars, and Stefan raps on Rise. And they're a duo. Like Flobot is a duo in terms of MCs, right? Like Black Star or something like that, right? I don't remember what happened. So because we were all friends in high school and stuff and partied together, you know, I would go see them do their rap shows, but then it would like literally be with a CD player or something. And I at that point, I'd been playing since I was 15 or 16 in bands. So I kind of knew like the local scene that wasn't really what it is today. It was still kind of like burgeoning or whatever. And then basically was like, hey, you should like, let's put a band behind you. So I got Schism to kind of back them up and learn some of his songs. And then we wrote some new ones, and then that was kind of the beginning of the band.
I wanted to ask, so since we've gotten into Flobots, who are your personal musical influences while you're making the Fight with Tools album?
I mean, we all listen to a lot of different stuff. I think the thing that made that record special was actually Nathaniel Rateliff, who's now like way bigger than we are, but back in the day had a band called Born in the Flood that was kind of like a U2 Kings of Leon kind of vibe or whatever. I mean, he was writing great songs like 15 years ago. Like he's really phenomenal talent. And they were kind of getting a lot of local love. Like the indie scene was like pretty supportive. And so we were friends with all the indie bands, even though we were doing this hip hop thing, like all the indie hipster bands, whatever. And they put out a record, I think it was in 2007. Oh God, what was that called? I wonder if it's even on here. Let's see if it's even on. Oh, there's only one album. I think the album that's actually, wow, I don't even think it has the album that's the album on Spotify. Anyways, it was like a really great album and we loved it. And like sonically, it was recorded really well and it just sounded like really great. And so even though we were doing a different genre, one of our goals was like, our record needs to sound as good as this record, even though it was a different genre and it was a different band, but it was a band that we really respected in town. And we like, you know, there were some good local bands putting out records, like a couple records that we thought were really good that could compete nationally. And we were like, okay, like we actually used that as kind of a medium for like how good our album should be, was actually like another Denver band that was like Nathaniel's band actually. So, but you know, like in terms of influences, I mean, those guys have all kinds of rap influence. So did I. I mean, you know, obviously we like I like Rage and Chili Peppers, and like, I mean, I like everything, a lot of hip hop, I kind of listen to everything. Um, and those guys, have their own, trying to think, like Outcast and like Public Enemy and like Tribe and like what is it, Quantum and Black Alicious and stuff like, Gifted Gab and Jurassic 5 and I don't know, tons of stuff. So I think what really drove that more was the political climate and like what everybody was feeling and what those guys were feeling and what the band was feeling at the time, that really kind of cemented it into like an actual kind of concept type album, was bringing all that, basically taking some of that vision, taking that stuff, and then I basically was like producing it, booking the studio sessions, that we recorded that album over the course of an entire year. Like it took a whole year to make that record. And then we just basically saved all the money from our gigs. I think we spent probably $20,000 making that record. And then, sold it to a label for a lot, for like $500,000, what we put into it. I think the biggest influence was probably actually like the political climate. Musically, I would say with some of these other bands in terms of just sonic quality of what we wanted it to sound like.
It's so cool to think about. Like I was just in middle school, like digging the music, and like when you guys were putting it together, I was just finding my way.
I know. I mean, the funny thing is now that like people are like kind of rediscovering that album and like listening to it like as adults. It's like, if you're like, you are like a lot of our kind of current bands, is like a lot of people, I mean, we have older fans, but like a lot of people found us like really like us maybe in middle schoolish time, and now they're like 22 or 23 and they're still like the band or whatever. So our like, that's kind of, it's kind of interesting, but now it's like you're an adult, you're doing this stuff, and then you like listen to it, it's like you like the album or you thought it was catchy, but now you like listen to the lyrics a little bit more, and people are kind of like just rediscovering things about the album, which is cool. I think that's cool. Maybe sad that we're still talking about the same problems in society, but cool that it still lasted that long.
I think I discovered you guys on like a skateboarding game or something like that, and I had to.
Oh, really?
I had a tape recorder. I would record songs off of Yahoo to listen to while I'm skateboarding. Nice. So I had you guys on my playlist.
Probably sounds like something how we would have been found back then.
Yeah, it was tight. Well, you've already answered this question about Bop Schism or Flobots. So was it, family stuff and things taking over that kind of led to the fall of Bop Schism around 2014?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there was like some personal, that band I'd been doing for a very long time, and then basically when I parted ways with Flobots, which was tough, I kind of just put all my energy into Schism. Like I was just like, okay, like, this didn't work out. I've got a little bit of energy left. I'm gonna like try to see if I can make it happen with my funk band, because I learned a lot from being in the band, in Flobots and doing all that. And then we always like, so then I get it together, and then like the singer would, like I was kind of a fun person, and then we added a girl to one incarnation who was like a lead singer who was cool. She was really great, and that dynamic seemed to work pretty well. But then she quit the band, and then we had to find a new female singer, and then did a whole thing, and then kind of found somebody that we thought was cool, and then recorded a whole album. And during that whole time, we were like doing all kinds of unsigned band competitions, and we like would almost win. Like we'd almost get the record deal. We'd almost like. We did this thing for Ford where we were like one of the top 10 bands, and then they like flew us out to LA, and it was like, if you won, you got to work with Don Was or whatever, who was like, he produced for like John Mayer and like, and it's like, but then we got second place. And then there's another thing for the Hard Rock Cafe where it was this global competition, and then we got in the top 3. And if we got second, and if we would have won, we got a record. Basically, they'd give you $100,000 to make a record. They fly you to London. You got to play this giant festival with like, you know, like Bruce Springsteen and a bunch of people or whatever. And then I think the London band won because they probably didn't want to fly an 8-piece band to like London or whatever. Because like the guitar player in like the head of Live Nation, and then the guitar player in Steve Van Zandt from Bruce Springsteen was like one of the judges, and like, you know, was like liked our stuff a lot or whatever. So kind of hustling and doing that and figuring that whole thing out, like it's like almost was like, it like almost was there, you know what I mean? And then just like with any band, there was personal dynamics, and you know, and at a certain point I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. so and then I was about to have I actually did not have a kid till later. What I did was dissolve that, and then I kind of did Andy Rock and the Real Deal, which was like my kind of thing again, where I put together a whole brand new band and recorded a couple of songs, and was gonna try to like, okay, let me try to do it like this. Let me do my own thing again, and like it'll be a new entity. And then that was around the time that my wife got pregnant, and then I was like, okay, well, I don't think I can do this much longer. So I'm gonna take a break from it for a little while.
I feel you. Well, how's the 2020 quarantine been for you?
You know, like, I mean, good and bad. I think bad because obviously we couldn't play shows, and like the band lost a lot of income. Not like, just like every band. Like if you're a band, we have a certain amount of money that we get in royalties, but you know, you make a lot of money playing live. So when you take that income away, that's like 60 or 70% of your business. It's really tough. You know, so and you know, I had rejoined in 2019 with the plans for like around 2020 with the election, and like we would go tour and kind of like try to get people motivated to vote, and you know, do all that stuff. But that didn't happen. So on the positive side, we kind of got to explore writing songs in a different way, and then I was able to really kind of look at the entirety of the business and really like start fine-tuning things and tracking down publishing money that had never been paid, and trying to get old catalog out that had never been put out, reestablishing contact with Republic, with our old label, and doing all that. So I think the forced pause was actually kind of cool in terms of like really being able to like dig into some things and have time to look at that. And now, because right now things are like, you know, we're not fully out of this pandemic yet, but I think hopefully by next year, I mean, touring is happening right now, but we postponed until next year just to try to be hoping it'll be a little bit better in March of next year. But planning a tour, booking a tour, working on a song with bigger producers, or working on songs, trying to get an album together, marketing, promotion, label, agent, all that stuff like that, it takes up a lot of time. So now it's like really busy again, which was nice not having that busyness over the pandemic to some degree, because we could kind of look at more big picture stuff. So I don't know, it was like good and bad. I think there's positives that came out of it in terms of just like communication, or like Zoom, and like all these. The other thing too is like when everybody was stuck at home, you know, like it was easier for me to get in touch with people too and establish contact with like the label and producer and all these other people, because everybody was just not doing anything. so that was kind of a blessing in disguise, I think.
Yeah, man, I can imagine. It's like everything it sounds like you're busy with, it must have been some kind of breath of fresh air, you know, just to at least be
It's the only time like the whole world had to pause, which is pretty cool. Like I can't think of any other time in history besides maybe the one like 100 years ago or whatever, when, you know, we're all forced to like take a pause. Everybody had to stop doing everything. So it's kind of interesting.
Oh, so yeah, about that virtual performance you guys did at the.
Shoot, sorry. Hang on, my interface is like muting randomly, which is super annoying.
I can still hear you.
Come on. Hang on a second.
Gotcha.
Super annoying. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that virtual performance you guys did at that art museum.
Yeah, that was kind of that was another thing too, like, you know, we could only do certain performances, and MCA was celebrating something or an anniversary, and so they asked us to play, and so it was kind of cool because we got to play on like the roof of MCA and just record it, and it was pretty fun. It took a little bit of work, but I think it ended up being pretty cool. So the MCA is really cool in terms of like working with local artists and really trying to get the word out and trying to like support local artists to play their stuff. And I think they're just like a cool art museum organization. They're kind of hip.
Oh yeah.
So I like them.
I was wondering how you personally felt about like
Sorry, ask it again. This thing is randomly muting on me.
I was wondering how you personally felt about doing virtual performances versus performing in front of people. I know you had like
they're just different. I think if I have a choice of doing that and being in front of people, I will take being in front of people 100% every time. But it's cool to know that there's some different ways to perform or reach an audience. And I think expanding that, but I'll always take playing in front of people over virtual, like every time for sure.
Do you think if we got locked down again, you would do another virtual performance?
We probably would of some kind. I mean, the cool thing about the virtual stuff is like we did another one on election night, and so like all our fans kind of from all over could tune in and kind of like, even though we didn't really get results that night, but it was kind of a cool thing for like everybody to be in one space. You have like 500,000 people like online together for a performance, and so that was kind of cool. But getting the audio right, making sure it sounds right, getting the lighting right, getting the video right, and then the one thing people don't really realize about all these virtual performances, like if you're doing something like that, you have to hire a video crew, you have to hire audio, you have to do all this other stuff so it looks good, and that actually costs a decent amount of money to do. So it's not necessarily cheaper to do a virtual performance than playing in front of people. So that's something, I think we're all going to adjust to, but I think it's a cool option to have, but I think people still want to be connected and in person with artists.
We'll see what happens with this new metaverse coming out, if you can do some performances that way.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, we're definitely exploring that, like in the, the NFT space and a bunch of other stuff too. So we're trying to like adapt to new technologies and new things and just try stuff out and see how it goes.
I feel like we've gotten to know quite a bit about you. What you been busy with lately though?
Well, yeah, I guess wrapping up kind of just so my day gig is I'm a professor of music business at CU Denver. And so I teach a few music business classes, upper level music business classes. And I also direct the pop rock and the hip hop ensembles, which you've been in many times and crushed it, which has been fun, not only playing guitar, but rapping and stuff. So it's always been fun having you in my ensembles. So I'm doing that. I have a 5-year-old Oliver and 2-year-old Theo, and so I'm just dealing with getting them in school and childcare and trying to keep them safe in terms of COVID and all that stuff. So family stuff, and then just pretty much just working on the band full time. We recently went in the studio with this guy, Sam Barsh, who's like a Grammy nominated like songwriter and producer. He recently co-wrote on the Hurricane track on the Kanye West record with like The Weeknd and Kanye. He was like one of the writers on that song. He's a really amazing like keyboard player, but he's also worked with Kendrick Lamar and like Logic and A$AP Rocky and Aloe Black and a bunch of people. So he's like got, a pretty impressive songwriting resume. So we've hired him to produce, like 4 or 5 songs, and maybe we'll make a whole album. We're just kind of starting with these 4 or 5 songs. But we went in last month. He flew out here. We worked on like 4 or 5 songs, and they're sounding really good. They're definitely, we're not done yet, but like I feel pretty good about the songs in their current state. So we're gonna do that. Maybe we'll get a whole album done. We're just trying to figure that out, because again, it costs money to make a good record and to promote it and do all these things right. And then when you don't have that residual income from shows for a whole year, you're kind of in the hole a little bit. So you have to figure out different ways to fund things. so yeah, so we are, so that's our main thing. We're trying to work on new music. We've got a couple shows here lined up for the end of the year. I don't know when this will come out, but we're playing New Year's Eve at the Marquee. We're flying out to Maine to play with this other rapper, Spose, for his kind of festival thing. And we're playing Salt Lake City and Grand Junction over kind of Thanksgiving break. And then we basically have like an East Coast and West Coast tour booked for next year. Hopefully going to put out like a new album, or at least start with new songs or something. And yeah, and then just kind of see where next year takes us. You know, we're going to just try to write as many songs, try to working on our like content in terms of like, you know, like reels or TikTok stuff, or and just putting out content and trying to battle the whole social media thing in terms of like reaching our audience, but finding other places for our audience to go if they don't want to be on social media. Because, you know, it's like good and bad, right? It's like, it's messing up our brains, but it's also like connecting people. So it's like, I don't think anything is ever 100% good or bad, but it, you know, it messes with your mind a little bit. So, We're trying to find ways like, but you know, the thing is, it's like, when you're trying to get your message out there, you have to reach people where they're at. And if some of our fans are on Instagram, then we need to be on Instagram to be able to reach them. And if they're on Facebook, we need to be there. And if they're on TikTok, which a lot of people are, we have to find a way to be on there that feels good and organic to us, however, and try to have fun doing it, you know? So, and create content that feels, you know, whether that's about political stuff or just human condition of just like, how do we get to a place where we can have discourse with each other without like hating each other? And music is like the one last medium where it's like, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or a Libertarian or whatever you are, like you can like the same band and you can like the same songs, and they, you know, even though they might hit you differently, it's like the one kind of thing that maybe still brings people together. That, and like it's kind of crazy that entertainment, I mean, people can hate on stuff and hate on bands or whatever, but for the most part, you know, it can tend to bring people together. So I think we're just trying to kind of figure that out, and what do we want to talk about as a band? Like, why are we here? Those are the things that I think are concerning to us, like, you know, activism. And it's funny because like a lot of the things that we still stand for, you know, whether it's equality, you know, Black Lives Matter, or like any of that stuff, it's like, that's a little bit more mainstream than it was in 2008. It was very controversial to be against the war. It was very controversial to have some of the stands and like, you know, same-sex marriage and like, you know, all these stuff that we're like totally about, but it wasn't as like kosher to be for those things back then. Now, luckily, I think we've all progressed, but unfortunately, I think now we're at a point where people don't know how to have conversations, and you know, people are so afraid of saying the wrong thing, you know, and getting in trouble that instead of, then they don't say anything, and then we don't have any kind of conversation about anything because people don't talk about it because they're scared to talk about it, or they're scared they're going to say the wrong thing, or they're, you know, like, and if we can't talk about things, then we're really in a bad spot. So that's kind of like, we're writing songs about that, and like, and about forgiveness and grace, and just like, you know, obviously people should be held accountable for their actions if they're doing bad stuff, right? But in terms of just human beings, like, we all are flawed, we've all made mistakes. When you've done the worst thing that you've done in your life, like, don't you just want a little bit of grace or a little bit of forgiveness for that bad thing that you did, right? So those are kind of songs that we're writing right now and kind of trying to mess with, and we'll see. Hopefully people will like it, or they won't. We'll just keep writing songs. So that's how it is being a band. You just try your best. So
Hey, that sounds like a great explanation, man. Like, it definitely has me excited for your guys' next album.
yeah, we'll see. I think it'll be cool. Hopefully people will like it. So I think I will like it when it's all said and done. So
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, yeah. Hopefully that was cool, and you got some stuff you can use. And you know, always love chatting with you. So
Yeah, you too, Andy, man. I really appreciate your time, man, and answering all these questions.
Yeah, no problem, dude. No problem. Let me know what else I can do to help, and yeah, and I'll talk with you soon, I'm sure.
All right, man. You take care.
All right, buddy. I'll see you later, man. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.